our quote for the day from Fred Hampton, who was born on this day in 1948. Mollie Ivins, it's her birthday too, by the way. But here's Fred Hampton's quote. He said, "Nothing is more important than stopping fascism, because fascism will stop us all." Boy, he was prescient. The Revolutionary Black Panther Party for Self-Defense chairman, Fred Hampton, who was murdered in his bed, as I recall. Anyway, by Chicago police, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, Chicago police. Thank you very much. The racism that is pouring out of the Republican Party is, and the people that Donald Trump and these other white bigots and racists who have taken over the Republican Party, and they've always they've been part of the Republican Party. I was going to say always. They've been part of the Republican Party since 1965 in a big way, and of course they've been part of our both political parties arguably forever. But in 65, that was 64 and 65 were the years when the Civil Rights Act in 64, the Voting Rights Act in 65 were signed into law by Lyndon Johnson, and the Democratic Party officially renounced racism, essentially, as its primary shtick, particularly in the South. And Richard Nixon said, "Cool, and the election of '68's coming up, and I'm going to be running. We will take those people." And so the white racists became Republicans in the mid and late '60s, and the Republican Party is certainly living up to this. And this is very, very troubling. I mean, you get Ron DeSantis, for example, right? The guy who is going to be running against Andrew Gillum in Florida for governor of that state. Andrew Gillum is black. DeSantis is a white Tea Party Republican, apparently a racist, Islamophobe, and conspiracy nut. If you take the fact that he was running a Facebook group that is all those things. He resigned yesterday. I'm no longer with that Facebook group. Yeah, right. But Pam Geller still is. It's got 95,000 members. They regularly have posts. This is from Think Progress, people by Elam Katami. They regularly have posts there slamming the Parkland shooting survivors, disparaging Black Lives Matter activists, comparing both to Hitler. They call them the NFL players who kneel, overpaid ball chasers who kneel like ISIS. They've made bigoted statements about Muslims, referring to Islam as a religion of pedophilia, sex slavery, rape gangs, and honor killings. One of them, this bizarre anti-Semitic and anti-Islamic post, "President Trump eats bacon, just one more reason to elect him in 2020. And somebody replies saying, "Unlike the last guy, at least he isn't a Muslim mole." So, that's, Ron DeSantis and his whole, monkey thing, and then talking about his opponent. And then we get this in Iowa. And again, this is something that has been ginned up and cranked up by Fox So-Called News, promoting white supremacy and racism across the United States since the 1990s. And also by Trump and all the Trumpettes, which is this story about this young lady, Miss Tibbetts, who was murdered by a fellow who is apparently, and Mollie Tibbetts, who is murdered by a fellow who's apparently an illegal immigrant. We haven't defined that yet, or a person here without documentation, or, illegal immigrant has come to seize the lexicon, just like right to work. It's one of these right-wing memes. But in any case, a reader in Des Moines, Iowa, to Starting Line, it's a website that's associated with the Des Moines newspaper, got one of these robocalls, recorded this thing. Apparently it got recorded on their voicemail, and sent it into the newspaper. The newspaper has published it, and under the headline, "Neo-Nazi Robocall Hits Iowa on Tibbetts Murder. Kill Them All." And, this is the bizarre kind of racialized politics that, might have been standard fare in the United States in the 1840s, but it, really should have no place in this country today. This is the kind of stuff that the Nazis were promoting in the 1930s, talking about Jews. Now they're talking about Hispanics. And this is from that robocall. This is what people were hearing across Iowa, and as far as we can tell, this may well be going national.
The body of 20-year-old Mollie Tibbetts was found in a cornfield after she was stabbed to death by an invader from Mexico.
An invader from Mexico. Oh my God, the brown people are coming. You know, we're not hearing much about invaders from Europe, right? Here it continues.
Biological hybrid of white and his savage Aztec ancestors who also killed with knives during their mass human sacrifices on top of pyramids they didn't build. Some relatives of Mollie Tibbetts.
Right, the savage Aztecs who had an advanced civilization. I mean, you could argue it was more advanced than some European civilizations. And what, they didn't build the pyramids? Oh, well, they couldn't have been smart enough to do that. Must have been space aliens, right? These guys are nuts.
Started implying that despite having been murdered by a non-white savage intruder, she would still support the invasion of America by a brown horde, currently at a staggering 58 million. But you know...
See, there's that brown horde, and this is the whole, oh my God, America is going to become majority-minority. Wait a minute. White people are the worldwide minority. We're right now a majority-minority country. The majority is white, and that's a minority worldwide. We're going to become a majority country, but it's going to be, quite some time. But that doesn't, stop these guys from just panicking. Oh my God. And people, regardless of race, people can hold to the values of the United States. I mean, this bizarre idea that because somebody's skin color is different or they came from a different country that they can't hold to the liberal values of the Enlightenment that animated the creation and the constant progress of the United States is terrible. Anyhow, he continues.
In your heart, they are wrong. If after her life has now been brutally stolen from her, she could be brought back to life for just one moment and asked, what do you think now? Mollie Tibbetts would say,
kill them all.
Mollie Tibbetts would say, kill them all, right? Oh, yeah, that's what we need to do, kill them all. The fact of the matter is Mollie Tibbetts' family is out there saying, quit trying to politicize the death of our daughter, sister, mother, or whatever she, I guess a daughter and sister. No, they're saying. This is not what Mollie Tibbetts would say. And stop saying that, right-wing Republicans. Stop saying that, Fox so-called news. Stop saying that, right-wing hate radio. And obviously stop saying that to these Nazi robocallers in Iowa. It continues.
Well, we don't have to kill them all, but we do have to deport them all. The Aztec hybrids, known as mestizos, are low IQ, bottom-feeding savages, and is why the countries they infest are crime-ridden failures.
See, this is the exact same language, or very similar language, that was being used against a whole variety of people of color over the years, against Chinese in the 1880s, against African Americans throughout the history of this country. And it is vile. It is poison. But he makes the point, we've got to deport them all. And now, I mean, check this out. This story, this from the Washington Post this morning. The U.S. is denying passports to Americans along the border, throwing their citizenship into question. They tell the story. This is by Kevin Seif of the Washington Post. His official American birth certificate shows he was delivered by a midwife in Brownsville, Texas. He spent his entire life wearing American uniforms, 3 years as a private in the Army, then as a cadet in the Border Patrol, and now as a state prison guard. But when Juan, 40, applied to renew his U.S. passport, he had a U.S. passport. The government's response floored him. In a letter, the State Department said they didn't believe he was an American citizen. The Trump administration is accusing hundreds, possibly thousands of Hispanics along the border of using fraudulent birth certificates since they were babies, and is undertaking a widespread crackdown. Cases identified by the Washington Post, interviews with immigration attorneys suggest a dramatic shift in both passport issuance and immigration enforcement. In some cases, passport applicants with official U.S. birth certificates are being jailed in immigration detention centers and entered into deportation proceedings. In others, they are stuck in Mexico. Their passports suddenly revoked when they try to re-enter the United States. Their crime, they have Hispanic last names and their skin is darker than mine. That's what's going on. This is Trump's America. On top of that, now they're going after people who who were not eligible to vote and mistakenly voted, which is, probably 50 to 100 people a year in the United States. This is not any kind of effort to swing elections. This is people, in fact, the U.S. Attorney's Manual says, by and large, these kinds of cases are people who simply didn't know that if you have a green card, for example, you can't vote. You have to be a fully naturalized citizen. They just didn't know. And so, for example, this is, this story from the Huffington Post today, the headline, "Legal U.S. Immigrants," legal, people who are here with government certification, with papers, face prison and deportation for voting. They tell the story of Denzelo Allen Page, is a 66-year-old Walmart worker in Raleigh. She helped her boyfriend register to vote in 2016. She said he was a legal permanent resident, and she wasn't sure if he was eligible to vote or not. So when they filled out the voting application, she did not check the box saying he was a U.S. citizen. And she said she left the box blank, figuring that the North Carolina State Board of Elections and Ethics Enforcement would let her know whether or not he was eligible. She said she had served as a poll worker before. She thought someone would flag the application and send her to a separate table to inquire about her boyfriend's citizenship status. She did this in person at a voting place. And when she asked if her boyfriend could vote, the poll worker said sure and took the form. So she thought everything was okay. On Friday, federal prosecutors announced that she had been indicted for aiding and abetting her boyfriend's false claim of citizenship. If convicted, she faces 5 years in prison and a $250,000 fine. This is happening all over the country now, but particularly in red states, where they are imprisoning people for registering to vote. Any idea why they might want to do that? This is, all racism all the time. It's turtles all the way down.